at the end for questions and answers. Great. So once again, my name is Ann Hand. I'm a program manager here at Hispanics in Philanthropy, and on behalf of the entire team here, I want to thank everybody for being on the line. We're extremely excited about this program. We know that there's a huge gap in leadership development for Latino and Hispanic professionals, particularly in the social sector, and so we're very excited to be able to offer a new program that hopefully will be of interest to many of you, and I strongly encourage you to apply. And I know there are people on the line here from all over the country, so that's something that we are also very excited about. Just to get started, for the people who are unfamiliar with Hispanics in Philanthropy, we're a transnational network of foundation leaders, corporate leaders, and social entrepreneurs who are dedicated to strengthening Latino communities. That's very broad, and it means a lot of different things, but what we focus on really is looking at solutions and high-impact groups, whether they're nonprofits, whether they're foundations, whether they're social ventures, whatever they may be, and we try to link that to initiatives that address issues facing Latino communities, particularly around areas of equity, looking at education, a bunch of different types of health issues, gender-based populations such as men and boys or women and girls, economic development. A really important part of this is leadership development. As I'm sure you all know, I'm speaking to a group of experts here, so I don't want to belabor that point, and I'm just so happy that in your expertise you're looking for ways to develop your leadership and your potential. Our legacy over the past 30 years, we're in our 32nd year now, has been, for the first, I would say, 15 years of our grant making, we focused almost exclusively on capacity building grants for Latino-led, Latino-serving nonprofits, Latino all over the country, and with a few international sites in Latin America. We had 18 sites focusing on capacity building. And as part of this, we also advocate for the increased diversity in the philanthropic sector. Getting to the point of this leadership initiative is really, looking at the significant growth of the Latino population and the lack of similar or proportional leaders, equity-based, looking at equity-based measures to say, if half of the workforce is projected to be Latino by 2025, then, there really should be a broader and an increased representation of Latinos at the leadership table to speak to the workforce. And since we're always looking for ways to develop new approaches and new programs within the philanthropic and nonprofit sector, we are just so excited, I can't say that enough, about this program and this opportunity. We've already received tremendous feedback, and we're glad to see that this has struck a chord at the national level. So this is, again, the information that we briefly presented in the email that I'm sure a lot of you have seen. What we're looking at, and again, with this Next Generation Fellowship, so the official name is the Next Generation Latino Philanthropy Fellowship Program. And when we're talking about next generation, really we're looking at people who want to bring their leadership to the next level within an equity-based framework, regardless of age and regardless of, kind of past. We know some people come to the field from other sectors. We know that some people, for whatever reason, they start formally in the philanthropic sector or the nonprofit sector later. And we don't want to restrict participation based on age. So when we're talking about next generation, we're speaking about that very broadly. Mid-career professionals, but mid-career in terms of this particular nonprofit career, nonprofit or philanthropy, social sector. Self-identified Latino or Hispanic individuals. And we're looking at initially a relatively small time commitment. We understand that everybody's very busy, and we're again sort of testing out a web-based model for this type of leadership, leadership training. So while this is, the initial 5-hour commitment is kind of the first level, we know that and we've designed the program with a potential for larger commitment, depending on individuals' flexibility, availability, interest. We know people, have different commitments, and so, being a fellow can be a different experience, depending on everybody's kind of individual case. And so, we would, for the initial cohort of fellows, we're looking at somewhere between 35 and 50 individuals who make this commitment to participate in the 3 web-based trainings, and then there will be other opportunities open and available for a larger commitment, which include one-on-one membership with Latino and Latina Foundation CEOs and trustees, and we also have scholarships available, a limited number of scholarships available to attend Hispanics in Philanthropy's leadership convening, which will take place in Sonoma, California, next March. So just some ways, and as you're thinking about this program and determining whether it's a good fit for you, we're really considering this the first step to create a national community of next generation fellows. Peer-to-peer connection, learning. Again, the trainings will take place within an equity-based framework, sort of as a transversal as we look at leadership development. And as I mentioned, the web-based format and kind of various levels of commitment to the program mean that people are able to participate in ways that make sense for them now in the next few months. So how can you apply? Please submit your applications directly to us at HIP. Our deadline to submit the applications is November 20th at 6 p.m. So it's a very short application. It's some basic just information, contact information, what your current work situation is, a 1-paragraph professional biography, and then a few specific questions. I believe there's 4 questions about what your what your expectations are for the program and moving forward in the medium term. We have a committee-based decision-making process, and all applicants will be notified of their status by December 15th. And then again, the webinars will be in the first half of next year, and we're planning on recording them as well, so people can go back to them if they can't make the webinar itself, or one or a couple of the webinars. They can access the information later. We've already gotten some feedback around, just some questions, and I wanted to take some time to go through the most common questions that we've gotten. As I mentioned, there's no age limit to apply. Applicants do not need to be a HIP member or or staff or a volunteer at a HIP grantee organization. And this question about working in the public sector has come up a couple of times, and I think that it's really interesting because it just shows, sort of the flexibility and the flux and the diversity of the types of jobs that people are doing in the social sector, whether it's public or private. Fellows do not need to be U.S. citizens, but what we are considering is that fellows be U.S. based. Right now we're looking at people who work in the U.S. Latino landscape, and we're developing a transnational leadership program to address more international realities for people who work internationally. There are no fees to apply and participate, at least at the the initial just apply to be a fellow and participating in the web-based trainings. Of course, the question of, being able to go to a leadership convening, is another level of commitment, and we do have some scholarships available for that, should that be of interest to fellows. But at least for these initial steps, no, there are no fees, and we are in the process of developing other opportunities for leadership development for Latino and Latina professionals. So, if this is not a good time for you, that's fine. There will be more opportunities coming up over the course of the next year. So I'm going to stop now and open it up for questions. And I also really want to thank the American Express Foundation, because without their support, this program would not be happening. And we're excited and very glad to be able to start the conversation and to connect Latino leaders. And so I see that we already have one question. What about a seasoned executive director of a Latino nonprofit? I guess by seasoned, I'm not entirely sure, because I know that, again, seasoned can mean different things to different people. But what I would say is, if you're looking to kind of expand your networks and push your leadership to the next level, even if you have, you have quite a few years of experience as an executive director. If it's something, you're thinking about other things, you're thinking about starting new projects, you want to see what other peers are doing, and be able to contribute to and learn from that community. I think that is a way to think about it, rather than in terms of years of experience, or because next generation can mean a lot of different things. It could mean somebody who's just retiring as well, and who's starting up, after a successful business career, for example, and they are trying to, understand, they've gotten it started, they've gotten a few years under their belt, but they're trying to understand the field in a much broader sense. Next question. Do you have an outline of the course content that you can share or speak to? So we have a few broad themes that we're looking at, and I think that that's something that, once we have the cohort in place, we'll be able to be more specific about. The one thing that I would mention is that, we're considering kind of I guess, more provocative leadership questions for these webinars and trainings. I think that, a lot of people have done different types of leadership programs in the past. Obviously, people who are taking the initiative to participate are a very self-motivated group, and we want to be able to address those questions that, perhaps, other programs have not been able to address during training, such as, for example, navigating change and conflict in as it relates to diversity and equity, visioning and capacity building, at a more personal level for your own leadership skills, things like that. Next question. I work in city government. My focus is to reach out to the community so everyone feels included in city government programs. Would this be an appropriate training for me to participate in? Yeah, I think so. And to the point of working as a government official, um, you know, I think that there's quite a bit of flux in terms of people who work in community outreach for governments and for people who work in organizing directly. Next question. What is the selection criteria, including the size of the cohort? So we're looking at a cohort size of between 35 and 50 people. And again, this is the first cohort. This is the founding cohort. So we want to keep it broad, at least starting out. We're looking at applications very holistically. So really, we're reading the answers, and we want to have a diversity of both geographic and professional representation in the cohort, very broadly. Next question. Have the Latino mentors been identified, and can you describe their backgrounds on a broad level? For example, what sectors, management level they represent? We have identified the Latino mentors, and I think just very broadly we're looking at foundation, Latino and Latina foundation CEOs and trustees. So if they're foundation CEOs, their background is usually much more directly related with formal philanthropy and with nonprofits. But for the trustees, I mean, that can really vary. And what we are also trying to do, and then depending on the cohort, is to create a good match between the CEOs and trustees' interests and background, and then what the cohort represents, particularly the members of the cohort who are more interested in this mentorship opportunity. Yes, and John, I completely agree with you. These are fantastic questions. Really, really good questions. And I'm just very glad to see that there's so much interest and so much participation. Next question, will the cohort have a chance to meet in person? That's not part of the 6-month kind of initial phase of the project. We're looking at the web-based work, again, in a way to sort of modulate the initial commitment that everybody would be required to make. However, the HIP Leadership Conference would be a really great opportunity for the members of the cohort who are available and interested in attending. Next question, will the webinars be interactive? Yes. And I think from one professional to another, it's always a tricky balance with interactive webinars. But yes, we're looking at interactive webinars exclusively. Okay, so it doesn't look like there are any more questions right now, but my contact information is there. I'm available. Oh, there is another question. Great. I'm a fairly new program officer and want to do the Latino community I serve justice. I struggle with understanding the levels of power that are available to me and whatever it takes to influence. Will the fellowship help me with the shift from CEO to program officer? So I'm going to make an assumption here, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that when you're referring to CEO, it's from a nonprofit and then going to a foundation program officer. Is that correct? Yes. Okay. Yeah, I think that that's a really interesting place to be in, and it's a really interesting space to be in. And I think that it's it's a career path for a lot of nonprofit and foundation professionals that we all, myself included, make at one point or another. And I think that the way, I'm hopeful, with the cohort that there will be people with this kind of trajectory, and we're going to be once the cohort is put together, we'll be sending out contact information and bios and all of that so that you guys get a sense of who else is there, and we'll try to connect people with similar career trajectories, who are in different places geographically. But the other thing about kind of leadership training and visioning and looking at these kinds of more trickier questions about leadership and career development. I hope that there would be space, to look at that those competing interests and roles and responsibilities. So I would say yes, but in a more individual way, and in a way perhaps that we would encourage people to be in touch with each other, and we'll provide sort of forums for that. But that's not something that we would necessarily deliberately set up small groups and facilitate conversation around that, if that makes sense. So the answer is yes, but also within a community of peers. So there's no more questions. John just posted the link to the convening in Gala in March, the leadership convening. So if you want to get a chance to look at that now or later. And again, that wouldn't be part of being a fellow necessarily unless you were willing to make that commitment. And we do have some travel stipends available and scholarships available for that. Are there any more questions? Well, if there are no more questions, okay. As soon as I say that, there's one more question, second time. I just want to be respectful of everybody's time. Could someone currently working in the private sector for profit but who is interested in nonprofit philanthropy leadership apply? Yes. Yeah, and again, in the application, there's a question about looking at Latino leadership in 2020, and that would be a really great place to talk about what that transition would be for you. Could we get the member price for the convening? Or would we get the member price for the convening? That's a good question. I wasn't thinking about that in terms of this group because we do have scholarships available for the convening. If it turns out that there is more interest in attending the convening than scholarships available, then that's something that that I would just need to talk about with the coordinators. But that's a really good question. So I'm gonna just hold the line for a couple more minutes in case there are any more questions. But if you have, you're kind of chewing this over, you're thinking about it, and anything comes up, in the next few weeks, please feel free to reach out to me via email or via phone. I'm pretty responsive unless I'm traveling, but I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. If we're in a okay, sorry, here's another question. If we're in a transition right now from one position to another, but the job move may not happen before your deadline, should we just apply anyway? Yes. Yes. And again, I think that we're trying to approach these applications in the most flexible way possible, understanding that people are coming from a variety of different situations with a variety of needs, and with knowing and understanding that they want to focus on their own personal leadership for the benefit of their community and their organizations. So that's really the approach that we're taking. I hope that that's helpful. Okay, so if there are no more questions right now, then I think that we can go offline. But again, I want to thank you all for your interest. Oh, there's another question. Regarding the timing of the courses, can we take them as quickly as we can, or are they spread out in certain weeks? So right now, what we're considering is kind of a staggered schedule. We'll be doing the webinars live, so it's not like it'll just be everything all at once and then you work through it at your own pace. There will be a few sort of points in the middle there that would at least be geared towards people reconnecting live. But again, those kinds of more detailed questions, I think, will be addressed as the cohort, as the cohort forms and is developed. And again, they will be recorded. So there will be the webinars available for people who cannot make the live, the real-time webinars. What does HIP hope, next question, what does HIP hope to achieve through the fellowship? That's a really good question. I think that since this is the first cohort, we're trying to serve Latino leadership better. And we want to understand, where people who are in this place where they're looking to accelerate their own leadership and development are coming from. We want to be able to connect these highly motivated, highly driven people with their peers around the country. We want to be able to really start to consolidate a broader Latino leadership and higher level Latino network within the nonprofit and philanthropic sectors. I would say those are our main goals for the participants. I hope this is helpful. So I'm just going to stay on the line a couple more minutes in case any questions come through. I see people are starting to log out. The other thing I would just mention is, please feel free to, forward this opportunity to your networks, to anybody that you think would be interested. I think with a cohort of, between 35 and 50 people, it'll be a really great opportunity to learn from a diverse cohort of people who, who you wouldn't necessarily meet otherwise. That's why we're looking at this sort of, more holistic application and a diversity of geography and nonprofit philanthropy, potentially government, potentially some people looking to transition, but who already have kind of a vision and a goal, within the social sector. So I'm not seeing any more questions. So I think that we can call it a webinar. And again, we'll be following up with an email so you can review this webinar on our YouTube stream. And just thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedules to learn more and hopefully to apply and to be part of this great group of leaders. I hope everybody has a great rest of their day and a great weekend. Thank you so much. Bye.